The ever-rising popularity of SUVs meant that it was a matter of when, not if, BMW would release its own three-row crossover. And the good news is, it's finally here. The 2019 BMW X7 arrives in dealerships this month, and we had a chance to test it out to see if it has big-time luxury and big-time performance to match its big-time price. BMW offers two different versions of the X7, the xDrive 40i, which I'm in now, and the xDrive 50i, which I had a chance to test yesterday. Now, the big difference between the two comes under the hood. The xDrive 40i has a turbocharged 3-liter straight six that makes 335 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. Compare that to the xDrive 50i, it comes with a larger twin turbocharged 4.4-liter V8, and that makes 456 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque. So a big difference in power between the two engines. In addition, the xDrive 50i that I tested yesterday also came with a dynamic handling package, and that includes M Sport brakes, an M Sport rear differential, and an active steering system. And none of those things are present here on the xDrive 40i that I'm testing today. So I've actually brought the xDrive 40i to the same roads that we tested the 50 on yesterday to see how it drives without those systems and with a smaller engine. Starting with the xDrive 50i, the dynamic handling package also adds something called Active Comfort Road Preview, and what that does is it uses forward-facing camera sensors, as BMW calls them, to actually scan the road ahead of the vehicle, so it can detect road imperfections, bumps, and it can also tell when the road is about to curve, and it preloads the suspension. So it basically has the X7 gliding over all these different imperfections in the road. It helps the suspension to feel more stable in turns, and that's kind of the big difference you get with and without that package. And with the xDrive 40i, without that package, it still rides pretty well, but it doesn't quite have that same kind of luxurious comfort that you get gliding down the road that I did in the xDrive 50i. The xDrive 50i's engine was also a great fit for that vehicle. The X7 isn't small. The xDrive 50i checks in at just over 5,600 pounds, but there's enough power to get it moving easily. I think that what's important when you're driving a luxury vehicle is that it feels like the powertrain is never really working too hard, and that's definitely true in the xDrive 50i. Plenty of power for any situation, whether it be getting on an on-ramp, for passing, or even for having fun. The engine's very active, the transmission is very responsive, and you can get to the power very easily. Now, though the xDrive 50i does outpace the xDrive 40i, it doesn't mean that the xDrive 40i drives badly. In fact, I think that it's also pretty good. The good news is the xDrive 40i is also available with the dynamic handling package, so you could get a base model with that same sort of active ride comfort feature that helps it feel more luxurious. But even in base form, by no means does the xDrive 40i drive badly. I think it's actually it rides pretty well for a vehicle, especially one that comes with these large wheels that this one is riding on. And though it does have less power, which means that you get a little bit less head snapping acceleration, it still has plenty enough power for it to feel luxurious. And I think that's the most important thing when you're evaluating a vehicle like this. Does it still feel like a luxury vehicle even in base form? And at least from a driving perspective, the X7 definitely does, whether you choose the xDrive 40i or the xDrive 50i. Well, the X7 does a good job with its driving experience. Where I think the vehicle really excels is on the inside. Now, both vehicles that I tested stickered at over $100,000, and thankfully, they have interiors to match. Looking around the inside of this xDrive 40i, it comes with one of their two-tone color schemes, which looks especially handsome with this kind of cream leather and navy blue motif that it has going on. It looks the part of a true luxury vehicle. One thing that I also appreciate about the X7, materials quality, it doesn't dip as you move back. A lot of larger vehicles are kind of like planes in that the front is really nice, it's got leather, but then as you kind of move back, things get a little bit more cramped, the materials aren't quite as good, and the next thing you know, you're sitting in a middle seat next to the bathroom. Not so on the X7. All three rows of accommodations, very good fit and finish, very good materials, no drop off from the front to the back, and this third row in particular has a few features that I really like as someone who used to be relegated to third row duty as a kid. Now, when I think about a third row, the first thing that I think about is access. So the X7 has really long rear doors, and what that does is it makes a wide opening that actually allows you to climb into the back seat fairly easily. There are handles on each of these captain's chairs which allow you to take the seats and push them forward and makes it easy for you to climb into the back. Now, once you do get back there, there's actually plenty of legroom and headroom, even for longer trips. This is truly a third row that you can fit adults in and they won't be uncomfortable. BMW has also paid attention to where to place the vents in the third row. So a lot of times those vents are actually kind of low in the vehicle and they end up aimed at your stomach, but the ones in the BMW are kind of like what you find in a minivan. They're up high, and what that does is it helps to circulate air better and it makes the cabin feel lighter. Also helping the cabin feel lighter, there's an extra pane of glass all the way in the back here. So there's not just a panoramic sunroof that covers the first two rows. The third row also gets its own moonroof, and it has a powered shade. So you just hit a button, it opens up the cabin even more, and then the third row doesn't feel stifling like it does in many other vehicles. BMW also put a lot of work into making the seating area of the X7 very flexible. There are no less than 3 points at which you can actually move all the seats around. And in the cargo area in particular, there's a panel on the side that allows you to do max passenger room or max cargo room with a touch of one button. And each of these seats here also have individual controls. So let's say you want to move this seat up from the back or this seat up, you can do that all from one panel back there. There's also, when you climb in, switches on the doors right here, and they allow you to also move seats forward and back as you see fit. The driver also has the capability to do so. It's a little bit complicated to figure out, but once you do, you're able to even move the passenger's front seat up if you want to make more room for second row passengers. Now, this second row also has 5.7 inches of forward and back travel, which means it should be easy for passengers to negotiate leg room. This is one of the most comfortable vehicles I've been in, that if you have to carry more than 5 adults around, no one's really going to complain with which seat they get. On the interior of the X7, only a couple things to watch out for. The first is that even though all 3 rows are powered, they do take a bit of time to move. So you might find yourself in that back panel in the cargo area, pressing the max cargo button, and then waiting 20 or 30 seconds while the seats kind of move around and get into the right position. But then again, it does beat the alternative of climbing all over the car and pulling different levers and latches to get the cargo area set up the way you want. The other thing to watch out for is if you do choose captain's chairs for the second row, they don't fold down. With a bench, it actually folds all the way flat, makes a nice large cargo area, but these captain's chairs, they just kind of tilt and slide forward a little bit, so you're going to lose out on some cargo carrying capability. Now, the X7 also comes with a long list of both standard and optional safety features, and this model in particular that I'm sitting in comes with all of them, including BMW's extended traffic jam assist system. Now, this system we first saw in the 2019 X5, and it's designed to work at lower speeds on highways, so it works up to 37 miles an hour, and what it does is it basically will drive the car for you at lower speeds, and it uses a camera buried here in the gauge cluster to watch your face. So it watches your eyes and your nose to make sure that you're not looking elsewhere, looking at your phone or doing things like that. And as long as you're paying attention to the road, you don't actually really need to grab onto the steering wheel like you do with many other safety systems. So it'll work up to speeds of 37 miles an hour. I actually got on 405 traffic here in LA on purpose to test this out, and I noted that the system does work pretty well as advertised at lower speeds. Where the BMW kind of has some issues, I think, is at higher speeds, and this is something that we noticed in the X5 as well, and that is that the lane centering system kind of does ping you from side to side fairly often. So it doesn't actually just like kind of center you in the lane. You can feel the car kind of wiggling back and forth a little bit. It's not too bad. It still does work well to keep you in the lane, but you know, the front end of the car does feel a little busy while that system is turned on. The BMW X7 is pretty much everything that you'd want out of a large luxury SUV. It has a luxury grade interior to match its luxury price tag, a spacious cabin with room for adult passengers across all 3 rows, and on top of that, one of my favorite third rows in any vehicle anywhere. It's also got 2 engines that provide plenty of power and a comfortable, quiet ride that I really appreciated over longer trips. I think that the X7 is not only the biggest SUV that BMW makes, it's also its best. The 2019 X7 is on sale now.